So Mr. Terry, this debate is about two things. The first is about debate about what is essentially immoral things. So this is a fundamental part of the debate. The second is that in what sense giving a birth should be considered given the social reality that we live in right now, and also by referring to the human nature that we always face regardless of context, and we think why giving a birth in and of itself should be considered as immoral. So I have three arguments. First, I want to define project a vision from opening government, what constitutes immoral things fundamentally. Second, I would talk about by referring to the social reality that we live in, why giving birth is essentially immoral. Thirdly, by referring to the human nature which all of us faces, why we think giving birth is something immoral. So this debate is obviously a value judgment debate, and we don't expect to have a policy discussion whatsoever. So that's a core part of the project of the debate that we're going to mention coming from opening up. So firstly, let's engage with the idea, what is objectively bad or morally abhorrent things? The standard in which we will utilize is the following three. First, people when they live shouldn't be hurt, especially on the basis of unchosen decision and unchosen characteristics, unchosen circumstances. Essentially, babies or agents or embryos don't have any agency to reject whether or not people are lived, and we think that's bad. Second, we think people, when making decisions, have to be responsible when they cause someone to be hurt. In many cases, we think social structures and the parents don't compensate to the bad circumstances which all have faces, except for the childhood situations right now. But thirdly, we think human beings shouldn't make decisions when they can choose not to do. So essentially what we say is that given the given two arguments, we think because parents can avoid not to have children, so we think parents shouldn't give us birth, and we think that's an important thing. So we believe in essentially three things. Firstly, humans in general are in fact suffering on the basis of unchosen situations. Second, we think, how I'm going to explain to you, the social circumstance of social reality is so harsh to every single individual, for exceptions, by having a huge, small number of exceptions. Thirdly, we think parents shouldn't utilize the agency. So essentially what we say is that we are forced to take a one-way ticket for regret, fear, and unchosen reality that we all have to regret it. So what's the kind of social reality that we are engaging with? That's the second part of my speech. So we are under a tyranny of arbitrariness. So in terms of gender, some country imposes a death penalty on the basis of sexual orientation. We all know that people are having a miserable life when they're living in poverty situations. We obviously know that giving a birth under a conflict or war, which is under Syria, Israel, Palestine, those sort of things, makes the livelihood of a child immensely traumatized, and we also think that's exceptionally harmful. But we also say, that's a kind of very extensive example. But in the ordinary life, in the developing world also, our talents, for example, are evaluated on the basis of a social construct. For example, right now, IT students or mathematicians and those English speakers, for instance, are far more likely to be evaluated as a valuable person than that of other people who are having philosophy, literature, artist measure, for example, or people who are chosen not to be born in the situations where parents don't allow or don't have any ideas why English is so important to their children at the end of the day. So we're under an immense series of unchosen characteristics is significantly damaging, and the harm is irreversible to the end of your life, because oftentimes the childhood education is going to be affecting your entire life situation. The trauma imposed by your childhood is obviously an endless pain that you always flash back within your lifespan, for instance. So we think that because all of us is subjected to unchosen harm, and we think that's damaging. And why this matters? Because sometimes people are living happily with their lives. We say people are, generally speaking, risk sensitive rather than happiness sensitive. Because well-known psychological fact suggests that people are essentially risk averse. That's a scientific fact that we shouldn't dispute. So given those traumatic experiences always revisiting to individuals, we think even if happiness exists, that always regret happens all the time because of the frequency of the harm as well as the big impact that's already subjected, like illustrated to you, is so harsh. Oh, sure.
Thinking about those most atrocious lies, if you think life is full of unavoidable, unconsented, like bad externalities, do you think it is moral to secretly murder those people without any pain when it's not recognizable by society or that particular person?
Like I don't understand why the secret murder thing is going to be the issue, but like I don't know, like. Because I've already talked about how, you know, unchosen characteristics, like our lives are full of unchosen harms that's going to regret. So maybe like it's like so I'm sorry, I cannot understand the POI. So let's engage with the second idea. Parents are clearly knowing the fact that they're giving birth on the basis of the fact that people are going to be harmed as well. So in Japan, for instance, the average business person is immensely stressed. You know what? So the immensely crowded train, for instance, imposes the same amount of PTSD effect to the the battlefield effect. So that's a clearly known fact that every single person is subjected to harm. So women also is having a direct experience that their gender is going to be discriminating against you just because you're a woman. Not only because of socioeconomic statuses, but the fact that your daily life consumption is far more expensive than other men, for instance. You have to drive a taxi, for instance, when you are walking in the night, for example, while men is not essentially don't have to take it. But also say, so we're living in a world where the resource is unjustly distributed. Under current system, parents are allowed to distribute the resources to their children. But we say that the resource should be distributed on the basis of need. So we think we allow a biologically related distribution of wealth, but we do not think that distributed system is just, because people are living under immense poverty. Many people are living with unequal education access. But we say giving birth to a child with the current system is violating the idea of justice. But we also say is that human nature. I've already talked about how people are essentially risk sensitive rather than happiness sensitive. I would add to that point by saying, behind a veil of ignorance, therefore, people should be thinking that it is completely rational things to be risk avoidance at the first place. So the ways in which we construct identity, the reason why we envision giving birth as something happy is precisely because of a social construct. And that's what the only unfortunate vision of happiness that we are already subjected to in the daily lives, but we already think about deeply. We think life is harsh, and giving a life is living and giving a life is immensely harmful and traumatized, and with that we impose.